great challenge for the philosophers who take up the view that death disqualifies life is to find a way that it doesn't. Right? And the Christian answer is pretty simple. Right. Why doesn't death disqualify life? One, eternal, because it's not extinction the way the classical view would have it. There's another answer.
There's a place that you're supposed to go.
Yeah, that's right. You can persist. There will be persistent personal identity. But even apart from that, even before you die, while you're alive, you can annul the power of death in your life by loving. That's the Christian answer. Why does death not disqualify life? Because there is a power stronger in life while you're alive, irrespective of the afterlife. There is a power in life stronger than death called love. And that doesn't mean you won't die. It just means that it doesn't matter.
It reminds me of that psalm that says, love is stronger than death.
Yeah, it's in the Song of Solomon.
It's hard for people. I mean, if someone's lost someone, that could be almost as significant as bringing a child into a family. So the two ends of the spectrum, you say, I mean, I guess it's different for every person, right?
Yeah. Now, this, of course, is the challenge this is the challenge, because when you get these, Psalms and Gospels and letters of St. Paul and all of this stuff, dialogues of Plato, sermons by a Dalai Lama, these are all ways of trying to give the experience of a conviction and of a way of life to other people. These aren't rules, right? These are passing on a conviction about what happens if you think, feel, and live in a certain way. If you have a certain way of life. And the Christian notion is that if you live for the sake of others, your own death will mean nothing to you. Right? And Tolstoy, of course, is trying to figure that out. Is that the answer? Is that the way I'm going to go? Because Tolstoy knew Buddhism, right? He knew Confucianism. He knew all the classical answers. And Tolstoy is still not in any abstract sense. It's not like he's kind of worried about this or that it makes him a little unhappy. Tolstoy wanted to kill himself. Tolstoy had to hide nooses.
And why did he want to kill himself?
Because it was anguish to live without knowing why. It was anguish to live thinking that you could be extinguished at any moment and that nothing about the way you lived would have made any difference to anybody for any reason. The absurdity of that was not acceptable to him. It really wasn't. It made him nuts. And it filled him with anguish, and
He just had a lot of conviction.
yeah, he was a deeply principled person.
But he didn't have a lot of faith.
That was the issue.
Because he
That was the
felt
issue.
like he had learned religion through and saw them for what they were.
That's right.
And what you just said, he just still didn't feel. I mean, you could put it to something more normal, like if I wanted to make the best chocolate chip cookie and I went to every Top Chef, but I still knew it could be made better. I mean, obviously
But that's it. That's right. Tolstoy thought that the institutions in his world, the government, the educational institutions, the religions, and the social order, all the institutions that were responsible for promulgating a way of life were inadequate to their mission and not even interested in carrying it out. Not only were they inadequate, but they were absolutely uninterested in the thing they were supposed to be doing. The church was just a bunch of guys in fancy clothes interested in preserving their prerogatives, right? The government was a bunch of bureaucrats who just wanted to keep their power, who had no interest in what they were doing whatsoever. You see how the story begins, right? The story begins describing a bureaucracy in which people aspire to be placed into a situation where they never have to do anything. So it's lazy, it's complacent, it's also dead.
Not living.
It's not living. It's a system perpetuating itself without any vitality. For something to be alive, what has to be true about it?
Got to be growing.
It has to be growing. It has to be purposeful. It has to be dynamic. You have to not know what's going to happen next with it, right?
Exciting.
It has to have excitement. It has to have a sense of possibility. It has to be liable to change in ways you can't predict. All of that has to be true. None of that is true, as Michael says. He says it very eloquently. Tolstoy's view was that he had seen through the fraudulent and inadequate and cowardly and lazy stances of the priests and the academics and the parliaments and the agrarian reformers and the gentry and the nobility. He looked at his culture, and everywhere he saw zombies, because he had this fervent sense of principle. And also because he was quite correct. He looked into his culture and he said, which one of you could withstand the knowledge of your own death? And then he writes this story. He writes this story. This is a story about a guy who is a perfectly first-class, top echelon, upper middle class professional guy who cannot stand, who cannot in any way adequately confront what? The fact of his death, which is more certain than anything else about him. So here's Tolstoy. You say, look, the most important fact of your life is that you are mortal. Have you even contemplated it? Have you even remotely begun to understand what that means? You've spent how much of your time thinking about how you're going to get this job, how you're going to get that couch, how you're going to get those curtains. And notice, where does he get his injury? He gets his injury hanging the curtains. And you haven't thought about the basic, you haven't thought about what your life is. You have spent all your time thinking about what your life isn't. Let's go back now and talk a little bit about this story. If you remember, Ivan has 3 adjectives that he uses to describe what he considers to be the good life. And let's take a little time with those 3 adjectives and talk about them. Do any of you remember what they are?
Decorous.
Yes, decorous is one. Decent. Now, in my translation, it says decent, but decorous works. Okay, you have what the Louis and Almayer Maud translation,
yes. Right?
I've got the Richard Pever one. It's okay. Decorous, pleasant, and easy. Easy, pleasant, and decorous. So decent is the other word. Let's start with decent or decorous, or decorum. An American synonym would be appropriate, apropos. Right? Decent. When we say decent, what do we mean? Often we mean good, solid, okay. It means a lot of things. When Thomas Jefferson uses it in the Declaration of Independence, a decent respect for the opinion of mankind. You know, remember that sentence? It's the very opening sentence of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people to sever their relations, la la la, a decent respect for the opinion of mankind requires that the revolutionaries give their cause. So, a decent respect for the opinion of mankind. There it's an adjective. Decent. Decorum is the same word. Decorous. Decor. They're all the same family of words. And they mean what? They mean doing the right thing the right way. It is indecorous to wear a tuxedo to the gym. It is indecorous. It is indecent, right? It is not what you do there. Those aren't the rules. It's not apropos. So this is the idea, right? doing what is appropriate to the conventions and the rules, following the silent or explicit assumptions of the group. So that's being decent, right? Decorous. So decor means what? Decoration. When you decorate something, what do? You make it look nice. You exhibit the taste that the people who you admire exhibit. You all have you have a set of rules, right? And those rules are conventional, and they are created by the mysterious silent consent of the community. It is now perfectly decorous for women to wear pants. It was not decorous 50 years ago for women to wear pants. No. All of you women in here would be in slacks, in skirts or dresses. Skirts or dresses. Skirts or dresses, because that was considered decorous. Because for women to wear trousers was for women to be like men. Like, why do men not wear now, as they did in the classical period, togas, shifts? Men wore dresses, right? They wore dresses. They didn't wear trousers. Trousers were worn by Gothic barbarians in the forests. No, Greeks did not wear trousers. Romans did not wear trousers. So the point is that decorum changes, right? That these rules change. That the rules that society has for the appropriate manner of dressing, the appropriate manner of speaking, the appropriate manner of establishing the look of your house. These are not natural rules. These are not God-given revelations. These are conventions made up for no particular reason. And trends. And they come and they go. And so you shouldn't treat them very seriously. Ivan Ilyich worships them. He worships them. He does. This is his idea. Now, what does he want out of life? Notice, he says he wants it to be easy, pleasant, and decent. He doesn't say he wants to be loved. He doesn't say he wants to love anybody else. He doesn't say he wants to know God. He doesn't say he wants to do anything like that. What does Ivan Ilyich want? He wants it to be easy, he wants it to be pleasant, and he wants it to be decent. The highest he goes on the order of moral awareness is to treat the trends of his world as if they are the Old and New Testament. What does that tell you about Ivan? He's a shallow guy. He's a shallow guy. And guess what? Everybody around him is a shallow guy too. And all the wives of all these shallow guys are shallow. We're talking about, and this is Tolstoy's view of the world he's in. He's in a world where people do not concern themselves with the important things, but because there is the need, there is the natural awareness that something is important, what do? They transfer that natural, God-given understanding that there are important questions to the unimportant things. They shift their focus. Instead of looking to the place where the answer to these questions would come, they pretend that the answer to these questions can come from a place it cannot. You cannot draw from being decent what you can draw from understanding the meaning of your life. Emotionally, intellectually, personally, you cannot. Having the right clothes is not remotely connected to the problem of having the right relationship to the people around you. The right relationship to the people around you is not established by your television programs you watch, or by the novels you read, or by the way your neighbors behave. It's not conventional. It's not a matter of decency. There's another source for that stuff. And Ilyich paid no attention to that. All right, there we are for decent. Pleasant. What about pleasant?
Pleasant